Good morning, my name's Gemma Stevenson. I'm a Senior Project Manager with Rubicon Archaeology. I've been a project manager for around 15 years now and a member of the Project Management Special Interest Group for about a year and a half. This series of tea break talks came about from several questions we had, particularly from early years staff who wanted to know how we ended up in the places that we end up. Why they're working on particular sites and how these projects came to be. So today I'm going to be looking at where projects come from and how staff end up standing in the field that they end up standing in. Most of our projects come through the planning process as part of the legislation, which we'll have a look at in the next couple of slides. There are various conditions imposed when a development wants to be taken forward in liaison with archaeology advisors around the country. So a whole host of clients could be large-scale housing developers, commercial development, looking at warehouse, data centres, that kind of thing, all the way down to private homeowners wanting to do modifications or extensions to their property, as well as local government schemes or indeed national infrastructure projects, large road schemes, energy providers looking at wind farms and solar, HS2, most famous rail one recently. So any development that involves any kind of impact on known or potential heritage remains will generally be subject to conditions. That means that in some form, be it desk-based all the way through to invasive excavation work, some form of heritage-related work will be undertaken before those projects can go ahead. And that is the majority of the large sites that we have in the UK taking place. So, as I said, all of these come out of specific pieces of legislation. So the planning framework, National Planning Policy Framework, which is currently being revised this year, should be out in summer. I know the consultation period ended a couple of months ago, so there will be some edits to this. But the National Planning Policy Framework underpins any applications that come in on a national level. The framework requires that local planning authorities look at their area as a whole, conservation and enjoyment of the historic environment. It should recognise that heritage assets are irreplaceable and that they should be conserved in a manner appropriate to their significance. So this requires that all applicants who want to submit a planning application describe the significance of any heritage assets and look at how they're going to develop the land, or be respectful to any assets which are within the vicinity of their development before they put their planning in and show that it's been considered. And very often there will be a condition on that planning, if it's being granted, that no development will commence until the applicants have secured a programme of archaeological work. So that could be a staged approach, and we'll go through the approach later. Or it could be that the site has already had some work taken place and this will just build upon it depending on the results of previous phases. On many sites, it could be that no previous work has been undertaken on the particular red line boundary, in which case very often planning will come back with a condition worded something along the lines of this current slide. No development shall take place until an archaeological written scheme of investigation has been submitted and approved. It will include an assessment of significance and research questions. No development will take place other than in accordance with the written scheme, and no development shall be put into use, which means no houses can be sold and occupied, or trading, if it's a commercial space, can go on until site investigation and post-investigation has been completed. So this kind of leaves it open. It means that the client has to go away and contract somebody, a consultant, a commercial unit, a specialist, to have a look at the site and advise on what works might need to take place. So very often, if nothing has been done before, there'll probably be a desk-based assessment just to see what the potential for archaeology in the vicinity is. If that has already been done, maybe by a previous landowner before it was sold on, then it could be that we already have some information, we know there might be assets there, and it could be a recommendation that either evaluation takes place or perhaps some monitoring before work could be undertaken. Sometimes the site can be in an area of known archaeological potential, and then you might get monitor information, advice from local heritage planning officer, which could say something like this: the proposed development is located in an area where remains of numerous probable Anglo-Saxon medieval date remains have been recorded, potential for unidentified heritage assets, and therefore they have specified that if planning permission is granted, based on all the other factors involved in planning permissions, they ask that a subject of programme of archaeological mitigatory works in accordance with MPPF is undertaken. This could be monitoring, in this case, under archaeological supervision of any groundworks. So it could be very open, as per the last slide, where not much is known, to very specific. They know the likelihood of archaeology, they know the nature of the likely archaeology, and in this instance they've recommended that a watching brief is undertaken while the groundworks are being done. In addition to developers building structures, there are also utility operators who will be undertaking field work that may involve the involvement of heritage professionals. Not all utility infrastructure requires express planning consent, and so they operate under what's called best practice. In many cases, permitted development rights that are set out allow utility companies and license providers to install, maintain and upgrade their networks without full planning applications. Examples for like minor works in highways or upgrading lines in small substations. However, these rights are still subject to restrictions in conservation areas and other sensitive locations. Major works or changes affected listed buildings, for example, and those with significant visual or environmental impact, like pylons, they will need explicit planning permission and will be assessed accordingly. Clients are encouraged to engage early for pre-planning advice, and so very often utilities providers or installation of new locations such as new wind farms and solar farms will be subject to desk-based assessments or environmental assessment feasibility studies. New guidance was just released relating to solar farms and archaeology, and that can be found through the CIFA website for more detailed information. On a much smaller scale, in addition to profit-making bodies, I guess, there are also smaller groups all around the country who are undertaking archaeology and heritage work. These can involve charitable organisations that are undertaking development, local community groups or charities themselves. Some recent examples being Operation Nightingale for ex-forces, or local interest groups, local archaeology groups within specific towns or counties, and also research bodies, probably most notably universities. I think probably everybody's undertaken some kind of student excavation, whether it's supervising it or taking part as a student, and these will be research-led. Although the work these smaller groups are undertaking is not subject to planning conditions because they're not actually undertaking any kind of development, there are often other conditions placed on these kind of projects to either secure funding or permission to undertake the works. These could be a commitment to training, for example, the students on the research excavations, or training of local residents if there's a social value aspect to the work being undertaken, or research going on within their town or county. The involvement of the community for outreach, for connecting people to the place, learning about their own heritage is an important aspect of undertaking some of these projects, or if there's particular sites or a research focus within an area. For example, some of the test pits that were undertaken around specific historical landscapes that are already known. And so this brings us to how you end up standing in the field you end up standing in. As we've discussed, the beginning of the process on the left of the slide, a parcel of land will come forward for development, an application will be submitted, no information is known, and therefore a desk-based assessment report will be commissioned. And this will look at various resources. That could be historical maps, that could be previous work that's been undertaken in the surrounding area of the development area. It could be looking at historical records that may be held in local archives, and from that review of resources, there will be a decision made as to whether there's archaeological potential on the site or not. If not, that's likely the end of the works. Looks like a blank site, it's never been developed in the past and therefore unlikely to have anything on it. Could be monitoring put on the groundworks just in case, or no archaeological potential and the development can continue. If the desk-based assessment shows there's lots of activity going on in the area, previous excavation works have been undertaken and they've found remains, then the archaeological potential is deemed such that maybe an evaluation should be undertaken. That could find little or no archaeology. There'll be a report on that blank evaluation saying very low potential for there being anything on the site, and therefore works can continue. If the evaluation, however, shows that there are archaeological remains present, then a report will be produced, and that report will give some kind of idea as to the significance of the remains. Are they significant at all? Are they locally significant, or are they nationally significant? In rare situations, the remains are of such a significance that preservation in situ is recommended, and then it's left to the client to have a discussion with the monitor as to whether part of it can be excavated, and then development can go ahead on part of the land. If none of it can, then maybe preservation in situ is the result and the land cannot be developed and the client walks away. Or if it's not of that kind of significance, then mitigation work can take place. This mitigation work could be full excavation of the remains that have been found, or partial excavation depending on the nature of the finds and where the concentration of them are within the site. Once these works are completed, a post-excavation assessment will be produced, and a publication will be disseminated, whether that's in a local journal or, depending on the nature of the excavation work and what was found, it could be a standalone monograph or publication of its own. So that is where the projects tend to come from. That is how decisions are made on where we're going to excavate and what the nature of the excavation works are going to be. And so I hope this gives you some kind of insight into why we are where we are. If you have any questions, we'd be happy to answer them, and feel free to get in touch with any of us if you have any more specific queries. Thank you.